Hello everybody. So I've set this video up and it's all organized and stuff. So we're gonna go over my updated Meria deck list. I put it on Moxfield as well. I've been updating it for about a couple months now. I appreciate you people that are watching and following my videos. It's pretty fun to watch you, take interest. And so let's continue. And I got a couple updates here. So we'll be going over the updates I have, and I'll just go ahead and zoom here. I got a nice new camera. So yeah, that looks cool. So again, the commander today is Meria, the Scholar of Antiquity. And she's a Gruul commander. She has the green and red mana sources and one colorless. She's an elf artificer. And her two abilities is to tap artifacts for green mana. For each artifact tapped, that's a non-token. She produces one green. And then she can also do what is called an impulse draw. For instance, if you wanted to tap two untapped artifacts, you could draw from the top of your deck. It would go instantly to exile, and you would have to play it that turn. So she has a good card draw engine too, when you need it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the deck. So I guess what we'll do is I've just started and I've kind of placed each of the cards in their specific piles. So for instance, we have our creatures here, we have artifacts here, lands, our instants, sorceries, we have our enchantments up here, and a couple planeswalkers as well. So I'll just get down here and just kind of go over each of the piles as we go. And yeah, it's a nice break, so we get to have a nice day off. So I'm very excited. We'll just talk about some of the lands here first. So Urza Saga is a enchantment land, and it has three chapters for that basically they trigger in each turn that it's out. So the very first turn it has Urza Saga adds one colorless. For stage 2, pay 2 and tap this card. So you'd be able to create a 0/0 construct. It gets 1/1 for each other artifact on the battlefield. And so basically you need 3 lands. If you did want to trigger that, you'd have to have 2, or basically you'd have to have 2 mana sources to pay and also be able to tap this land to get the construct. And then for the third chapter, you'd be able to go into your deck and search for a 0 cost or 1 cost artifact card, depending on the situation. Maybe you're going to want to find a soul ring. Perhaps maybe you want to find a shadow spear. I mean, it just depends on what the need is at the time. Or so there's definitely a lot of options, which is good to have. So definitely like this card a lot, especially in this deck because we have so many artifacts that hit the battlefield. And then we have our these are also termed as man lands because they can be, for a certain amount of mana, you can create them into attackers or defenders. And this is the Den of Bugbear. It's lots of play, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this card. And for 3 colorless, 1 red, it becomes a 3/2 goblin when it attacks. It also creates a 1/1 goblin token that's attacked. It's attacked and tapped at the same time. And you can also specify which targets you want to hit. If you want to, for instance, if you want to send the attacking token at a planeswalker, you could do so. Or if you wanted to send it to your opponent, you could do that as well. It's a very cool card. Here's from the channel lands from the Kamigawa Dynasty. Sakanzan. These also cost less if you have legendary creature cards on the battlefield. So it costs 1 less, and these can be gone on instant speed, so you can play it during your opponent's or your turn. For 3 colorless, 1 red, you can create 2 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens, and again, it costs 1 less to cost for every legendary creature on the battlefield. So it can also serve as a land. It comes in untapped. It's just everything you want. And I believe we have 9 mountains in this build. So 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Okay, so 10 on this. So I'll make sure I can do the math, but I believe on the Moxfield I have it as 9. So I'll get into that, look in that a little bit later. And then the Lair of Hydra is another man land as well. And for the Lair of Hydra, and also I forgot to mention about the Den of the Bugbear. They come in tapped unless it's one of their either your first or second land of the turn. So that's just you want to basically get these out of your hand, especially when they're in your opener, so you can make sure they come in untapped and you can utilize them when you want to. Castle Garenbrig. This is a good form of mana ramp for us. It will only come into play if you control a forest, so that's a key aspect of that. So you have to play around that sometimes. However, for 2 colorless and 2 green, if you tap it, you can add 6. So you basically get ahead of land, which is really cool. I like the castle, so this is a castle. Castle Garenbrig. Here's Boseiju. This is I would say it's used for both. What a utility card. I mean, of course, you can just come in as a land if you needed to. When we have our commander on the battlefield, this is just like a one mana, destroying the enchantment, destroying an artifact, or even a non-basic land an opponent controls. That opponent then may go into their library and find another basic, and that basic comes into the battlefield. And I believe it comes in untapped. Yeah, just comes onto the battlefield. So, I mean, that's the downside, but of course, if you're hitting a big problematic enchantment or artifact, this is just pays its weight in gold, and it can act as a land. It's just a fantastic card. Of course, we have our forest. I'm assuming this is going to be about 8 cards. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so what I want to do, just like a quick little edit here, because I do think I want these to kind of match the list I have online, and I think it is fine to have it as 9 and 9. I think you want to be balanced at 9 and 9 with this. So we will have our 9 forests and 9 mountains. And then we have come to our dual lands. So here's Copperline Gorge. Copperline Gorge enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or a few other lands. So it's either it's your first, second, or third land you play of the game. It comes in untapped, so fantastic. Dual land there. Exotic Orchard. This will produce any mana that any of your opponents would control, and it comes in untapped, so it's going to basically be a nice rainbow land. Fabled Passage can fetch us any basic from our hand, deck, and it also comes in untapped if it's your fourth land or more during your game. So Rockfall Vale. This is a slow land, meaning it will only come untapped if you've played 2 previous lands for the game, but it's also fantastic. A nice dual land here, produces mountains or forests. Here's the Karplusan Forest. This will produce also a dual land. However, if you do produce a red or a green, you will take a damage. So it does a little pain to you. Here's a Rootbound Crag, a dual land. Will only come in untapped if you control a mountain or forest. Here's Stomping Ground. This is very fun because it also has a land type of a mountain and forest, so you could use one of your fetch lands to fetch it up. For instance, we'll talk about one of our fetch lands in a moment when we get to it, but this would be a good target. It's a nice dual land here. And you have the option for it to come in tapped, or you can pay the 2 life, and it'll come in untapped. Spire Garden. This is another dual land. It comes into play untapped during Commander when we have 2 or more opponents, so it's just a perfect dual land. And once again, this is Wooded Foothills. This is our dual land fetch that we have in the deck. These cards are on the more expensive side. They tend to get like into the $45 range and above. They're great because they can fetch you dual lands, and such as that shock land, and that's kind of our target here for this one. You could also just find a regular mountain or forest as well. So any mountain or forest card, you can find it, put on the battlefield. So has a lot of utility. So very cool card. Wooded Foothills. I also love the Pathways. This card can be chosen to play as either a mountain or a forest. It has a flip card, so if you're not familiar with these, mountain on this side if you wanted to play as a mountain, and these also come in untapped for your information, or if you want to play as a forest. There you go. Very cool. Rock on. All right, so Command Tower. This card is a perfect dual land for us. It adds 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, and we're back to Urza's Saga. So there's the land, and now we get into our artifacts. So for this particular deck, I have I played this deck many times, and I've kind of went in and out of, do I want my mana rocks in here? Are they serving like a major utility? And I would say so. I think the mana acceleration to getting to your commander and kind of getting that ball rolling is important. We're not going to be playing any of the Jeweled Lotus in this deck. We're not going to have Mana Crypt in this deck, or Mana Vault. We're just going to be playing some good, honest commander here, and we're still going to be able to beat up on those decks too. I know it might sound a little bit crazy, but this deck has got a lot of gasoline, and I think you'll find it very fun and enjoyable to pursue a commander like Meria. And Arcane Signet, of course, is a fantastic commander card. For 2 mana colorless, it comes down, and you may immediately add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So, in terms you don't know, for artifacts, if they're artifact creature or such as a vehicle, they're still affected by summoning sickness, but artifacts themselves can tap the turn they come down for their triggered abilities. Their tapped abilities, such as this. So these can come down and they can start working immediately. So Arcane Signet. Sword of the Animist is a 2-cost artifact with an equip cost of 2. Gives our creature 1/1. Whenever a creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tap, then shuffle. It's going to get us ahead. If we have a nice sequence with this, we can really get into our attacks and start getting mana on the field, some extra mana generation. We really want to get onto hot starts with this deck. Misha's Bauble, 0 costs. 0 costs are going to be important. What's great about the baubles is that they allow us a little information. For instance, this one lets us look at a top card of a target player's library, and then also lets us draw a card at the beginning of the next turn upkeep, and it's just a 0 cost. So Meria will be able to tap it for mana, so it's just a perfect card. Treasure Map. This is going to be one of the slower cards, but in terms of producing, but it's going to definitely pay off as we move through the game. For 1 mana, you may tap it and scry 1 and put a landmark counter. When this card has 3 landmark counters on it, this turns into a land and it provides you 3 treasures. And the land itself, it can produce for colorless. And if you sacrifice a treasure, you tap it as well to draw a card. So it's either of those abilities what it can do. So either mana or sacrifice a treasure to draw a card. And we do have some other ways to generate treasure in this deck too. So cards are good. We like those. Dowsing Dagger. We do have some good early type of threats. We have some options for our early attacking threats. So we definitely want to get our Dowsing Dagger onto something, give an opponent 2 useless 0/2s, and attack one of our open opponents to turn the Dowsing Dagger into a Lotus land. So for instance, once this connects the equipment with a creature to an opponent and deals combat damage, you can transform this into a land that adds 3 mana of any 1 color to our mana pool. All these equipments are very strong. And very good with Meria because they can tap themselves for mana and basically pay the equipment cost. You don't have to tap this for, to pay an equipment. You just have the equipment can pay itself. So it's just genius, man. Genius stuff. Urza's Bauble. This is another bauble that lets us get some information. This one lets us actually look at an opponent's hand or look at a card from an opponent's hand at random. And then we do have the option, of course, to sacrifice it and draw. And that's also included in that effect when looking at the hand. So we love the baubles. Another 0 cost artifact. Lightning Greaves. So for this card, two cost colorless. Once again, that doesn't specify if it needs a mountain or a forest to pay it. And once this comes onto the battlefield, the equipped creature has haste and shroud. Equip 0. What's nice about this is it's equip 0, so you can keep moving it around if you need to. For instance, if we wanted to equip something to Meria, we could basically, if we really wanted to, we could, risk taking the greaves off and putting something else on her if we wanted to. For instance, maybe a sword or a dark steel plate. That might be something to do. The thing about this is why you have to keep moving it around is once this is put on a creature, it has shroud, so it can't be the target of spells or abilities. So that's kind of the main warning about that. But they also get haste, so we love that. We like haste. Great card. Commander Plate. So this is just so good here, and I mean, it must be a decent card in other decks too, but for this deck, it's just exceptional because it, like I said, it comes down as a 1. Usually, I think on turn 3, if you already had this out and you're going to play Meria most likely on turn 3, unless you were, there's some type of situations where you might be wary in certain games, but this deck, this commander is kind of sneaky. So people are probably going to be aware like exactly what's going on, and they're not going to probably be prone to countering Meria very often. So what's going to be nice about this is if you did have this out and you had 3 other artifacts by turn 3, which is possible because we have a lot of 0 and 2 cost artifact costing cards, then you could set down Meria. You could also utilize this for mana the turn it came down. You could pay its 3 costs and equip Meria, and you'd have a 6/6 hexproof. Basically a 6/6 that has protection from each color that's not in our commander's color identity. So I mean, it's going to basically make us a threat to probably a couple opponents, but it's also going to be making her more evasive, and commander damage is a thing. And if we can get Meria strong enough, which we can do in certain circumstances, then we can definitely achieve that commander damage criteria for taking out an opponent, which would be very cool. Sensei's Divining Top. This card is kind of wacky in this deck because it enables itself, which is fun. And so we can kind of manipulate our deck by looking at the top 3 cards by paying 1, putting it back in any order. We can also draw whatever is on the top of our deck as well. So just adds a layer of dimension to getting cards that we need, and maybe even cards that we need at the very moment. This is something that can be helping us get to that point. Prying Blade is a 1-cost artifact. Gives a creature 1/0, and whenever it deals combat damage to player, create a colorless treasure artifact. It has equipped 2. Just another solid 1-mana artifact here for the deck, which is going to be really nice for our double strikers. We have a couple double strikers in the deck: Lizard Blades, Phyrexian Dragon Engine. We also have Embercleave. So if we can get some of those attackers kind of getting in with double strike, and hitting opponents, we're going to be making additional treasures, which is nice. So just another solid, like, kind of get ahead kind of card there. Esku's Chariot, I really love this card. It just makes tokens, and we'll talk about like kind of the interactions it has with some of our tokens, like our Goblin Shaman from like from the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and we also produce some other tokens with, like for instance, the Titan of Industry. So the Chariot definitely gets us a board presence, and can keep creating these tokens, and it's also can be tapped for mana itself, so it's nice. Looks like I have a duplicate in here. Guys, that's not fair. That's why I do these deck techs. See, I was cheating the whole time and I didn't even know it. Yep. All right, so that's gotta go. I do love this card. I'm not surprised that I found an additional one in there. That's so funny. All right. Well, there's that. So we'll be looking into that to see which one I've kind of omitted, one of the artifacts that I've omitted. Kind of curious what it was. I will look into that. All right, well, we talked about Das and Dagger again. Obviously I had two in here at the same time, but I didn't notice. All right, Dark Steel Plate. That is a 3-cost colorless artifact, and it has indestructible. Ooh. And once it's equipped, that creature has indestructible. So, once we get this equipped to something, I mean, there's like some exile effects like here and there, but really, is there a lot like in Commander? I mean, I don't know. So this Dark Steel Plate is just gonna, it's gonna be great. I'm a fan. Here's the boots, Swiftfoot boots. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste, and it doesn't have shroud. So for instance, if we had the Swifties on, we could still put like equipment on our creatures and not be afraid of, have to take these off and leave our creature vulnerable. So the Swiftfoot boots, 2 mana. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Great. And equip 1. This card has just come in handy so many times. I love it. Mox Amber, just another kind of nice mana generation. We actually have a 1-cost legendary artifact in here called the Hope of Jirapur. And that's such a funny interaction where you could just really start getting ahead on mana. Like in a busted way, right? Because you could come in here and maybe in certain sequences, and you could have a lot of mana. Like come even turn 2, you could have a lot. So you could have your commander down by turn 2. There's some sequences where you could really get going. That's what I like about Magic, is just kind of these super awesome sequences where you're just gonna be able to really show off your synergy for the deck. That's what it's all about, right? Reckoner Bankbuster. This is from also Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's fantastic. This card is just the ultimate gasoline. It can serve as a attacker. It can serve as a defender. It can draw you cards. It does all that for the cost of 2 mana. It just comes down and just kind of does everything that you want it to do. Yeah, the cards are really something too. So for 2 mana and a tap, comes on the battlefield with 3 charge counters. Pay 2 and tap it. Take off a charge counter, so you can do it up to 3 times. Once that, so you draw a card each time you do that. You can do it once each time you tap it. Once you remove that 3rd charge counter, not only draw a card, but create a treasure token and a 1/1 colorless pilot. It's just unbelievable. What a cool design. And this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 or greater for that pilot that you create. So it can crew the Bankbuster, which is nice. Crewing mean that for this to come into the battlefield, to either attack or block, it needs to tap a creature's, they basically have to meet a criteria for how much power to crew this into the battlefield. So for this has a crew of 3, so you would have to crew a creature with 3 power or more. You'd have to tap that creature to crew this into the battlefield. And it does have 4 power and 4 toughness, so you do net some power and toughness on some circumstances. Very cool. Soul Ring. 1 mana, comes out of the battlefield, create 2 colorless. Boom. Sweet. Shadow Spear. Wow, Shadow Spear. 1 cost. You know, it's so sad though. Like its equip is 2 though. What if it was 1? What if you only had to pay 1 to equip something with this thing? It'd be just crazy. So equipped creature gets 1/1 and has trample and lifelink. Huge, huge stat. Huge stat indicators there. Trample and lifelink. The 1/1 can come in handy too. So this gets on a creature, you just start gaining life. You can start racing people. And it also has another effect for 1. Permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's just crazy. Explorer's Scope. I am a fan of this card. So this card, once it's equipped, you attack and you get to look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, just plop it onto the battlefield. It comes in tapped. There you go. Boom. Probably really good with the Divining Top because you kind of manipulate your deck. Make sure you have lands on top if you need to. Howling Mine. This is just a card that will just net us cards because we're going to be able to tap it down with Meria and have it untap on our turn. So it's just going to give us an additional card from everybody else. It's perfect here. Basilic Collar. 1 mana artifact. Equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink just to give us a little extra life. And the Death Touch is always nice. Equip 2. Embercleave. Embercleave is an equipment that provides double strike, which is nice. We like equipments that provide double strike. Very important for us. You would see it has a high cost, relative speaking. However, that cost is reduced by the number of attacking creatures you have. So for instance, if you had 4 attacking creatures, that 4 would be negated and you would just have to pay the 2 red to bring this on the battlefield. What's also nice about this is it has flash. So if your opponent's blocked in a certain way, you can Embercleave in a particular way so that your creatures benefit from the attack while the opponent's does not. This your creature gets a 1/1 buff, so to its stats, and also gets double strike and trample. So the double strike is big because it basically it will strike first before any other damage is dealt by the other opponent's creature, and based on that damage, whether you kill that creature or not, then you would also trample over it as well. With the double strike, you deal the damage twice. So, very cool card. And just to equip it out of the combat, equip is 3 once it's on the battlefield. And remember, again, it could pay for itself if it needed. All right, here's the Great Henge. This is one of the more expensive cards in the deck. I think it's hovering around $70 now. And the reason why is because other than gaining you some extremely awesome modes, one of which is actually kind of low key is the life gain. It's just always giving you that 2 life. Every time it gets tapped, you're getting a 2 life. Also, when it's tapped, you can produce 2 green for its tap effect. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. So it gets stronger. It's drawing cards for all it rewards you for playing creatures, which is nice. And it also costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So I'd say like at the least, we're gonna have a 5 power creature out. So this card is never gonna like really cost us more than 4 mana. There's also gonna be times where it's only gonna cost us 2 mana because we might have like a Cityscape Leveler on the battlefield, or we might even have a Terastodon, on the battlefield. So, I mean, those creatures have more than 7 power. So this card is basically going to be heavily reduced, and it's gonna help us find the answers that we need. It's gonna keep our cards going, and also whoever we do cast creatures, they're gonna come in a little bit stronger. So, awesome. Okay, here's the next artifact, Sword of Forge and Frontier. This is a perfect sword for the deck. It lets us get into decks that just play green and red creatures like other commanders, because it does give us the pro red and protection from red and green. And it lets like some Meria like kind of get sneaky and deal a lot of commander damage to opponents. And also what's nice about this card is really great with double strikers. And, you know, that's something that you have to consider with this card, because when this card is equipped and the creature deals damage, if it deals, it does it on the damage. It's triggered on the damage. So if you deal damage twice, you get to trigger it twice. And why this is important is because once this card deals damage, it exiles 2 cards from the top of your deck, meaning it draws it into an exile area, and you can play an additional land from on your turn, that same turn as well. So, you know, maybe if you're running low on cards, this starts kind of exiling cards from the top of your deck. If you have a double striker, that's 4 cards, and that's perhaps 2 additional lands you get to play. So it just keeps getting the gas going. It's just such a good card. I am going to consider perhaps what I want to do, and I want to make a note of this, is I think I want to get a Microsynth Gardens in this deck, because I think it'd be great to like copy cards such as the Sword of Forge and Frontier, or the Sword of Animus, or maybe even like one of my bigger artifact creature cards I have, like a Wormcoil Engine would be kind of fun too. So I have to consider that. Felwar Stone, a mana rock. It can take the mana value of any of opponent's lands that they're playing. So just another great card that lets you play colored mana from whatever your opponents have at their disposal. That will actually let you play it from this artifact as well. So just can produce 1, sort of like the Signet. Not specific to our commander though. Rather just from our opponents, but just another great mana rock that we're going to include on this. Yeah. I don't know, but you guys like that art? So sick, huh? So sick. So I ended up having an extra Dowsing Dagger. I will definitely, my list on Moxfield says 100 cards, so there's probably some kind of janky artifact in here. I was looking at the Sword of Fire and Ice as an additional sword to put in here, because that's a really cool card too, that draws cards. Another cool sword. And we'll just kind of go through. This deck isn't like based on any kind of like Paradox Engine. I'm certain like I could sub, for instance, like a Kogla. I am looking at the new Itali for substituting for the Moloch. Perhaps even for the Kogla, you know. But just one of either or. But because the new Itali is going to be the same cost, and I think actually probably the Moloch is going to go. But about to my point, like for instance, I could definitely cut like a Kogla for like a Paradox Engine or something. And you know what that would do is it basically would kind of put me into a loop where I could just keep on impulse drawing with Meria. Because I have so many low-cost artifact cards, and if Meria was on the battlefield, I can just keep shuffling through and just dropping more things, and I could do something like that. But this is fine. I'm having a lot of fun the way it is now. So, I mean, just do what you want to do. I mean, seems to be kind of decent power level for the LGS I go to, so, you know, I'm not too concerned about it, but there are certain ways, if you wanted to take this deck to be more competitive, you could see probably just off the top of your head, like maybe a Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, Paradox Engine, and like Etherflux Reservoir. If you want to go to like kind of like a more combo-ish type of route. And I think you could probably keep the same kind of shell, because you could have a beat down shell and a combo shell, you know? So, but this is kind of more of a beat down shell, which is nice. So we have Kogla here. This is a 7/6. I really like the cost of Kogla, actually. It's like a pretty manageable cost for what you get. And when it comes on the battlefield, it can fight another target creature you don't control. And then when it attacks, it actually, on attack, it destroys target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. It'd be really nice to like kind of put some boots on here, or like even some lightning greaves. And you can just start going to work with Kogla, taking out enchantments, problematic enchantments or artifacts. So I'm all for it. Moloch. I've always liked Moloch in this deck. I think it's fine, but I think like that the new dinosaur coming out in Mother March of Machines is going to be good. Basically because it's going to let you, once it ETBs, you get to exile cards from your opponent, like a card from your opponent's libraries, and cast that card without paying its cost. And it's also like, I think a 7/7. And I think you can mana sink it into a Blightsteel Colossus. So yeah, Moloch is kind of like looking kind of sad compared to that, because I am paying also 7 mana when I want to play for this, and then it's like Kogla where it can come in and fight an opponent's creature. If it dies, that creature it's exiled. What's also fun about this is that when X is 5 or more, which I do cast it for very consistently, you draw a card as well, which is really good. Probably one of my favorite cards in the deck is the Cityscape Leveler. And I ramp out to it pretty fast with this deck. You can get this out in turn 4, turn 5, and blow up something on any opponent's upon cast, so they can't interact with it. So it's really awesome. 8/8, and then when it attacks, it also blows up more stuff. The thing that your opponent gets is they get a tap Power Stone. So whoop-de-doo. It doesn't really do anything for them usually. This is Lizard Blades. This is a fantastic equipment card. It's so very good. I'm just always looking for cards that, might give more double strike, because I'm always dreaming about Meria, like, getting like a commander played on and maybe getting buffed from some other thing like an Ember Cleave and just, doing the dirty work and just taking out opponents. But I really like this equipment in this deck. It comes down for a red and a colorless, and then it can also, with Meria on the battlefield, help pay for its reconfigure strike costs. So it's a creature. As a creature, it's a 1/1. It can be reconfigured for 2, and your equipped creature has double strike. So kind of talked about double strike a little bit earlier with Embercleave. Goldspan Dragon. The 4/4 stats are on the lower side, but it does fly and it has haste. It has a powerful effect. Whenever it does attack, it creates a treasure token. Our treasure tokens with Goldspan Dragon produce 2 mana instead of 1. Whenever this becomes a target of a spell or ability, it will create a treasure token as well. This is a part of like a couple combo things, but we're just going to be using it for its utility here. Titan of Industry. If we get to our Titan, the opponents are going to be having usually a bad time at that point, because we're going to be able to gain life if we need to. We can destroy certain enchantments on the battlefield, create 4/4 Rhino Warrior creature token, or even put a shield counter, which is basically like a one-time indestructible counter. This card works very good with the Fable of the Mirror Breaker with our reflection token. Creating copies of the Titan has great enter the battlefield modes, so it's just really great card here. Elder Gargaroth is the cheapest card in here in terms of like it's just the most unfair creature we have. It's a very low casting cost card. It draws cards. It's a huge body. It's a 6/6 with trample, vigilance, and reach. It draws cards. It can create beasts. It can gain life. It's a wild card. Really interesting. Also not the cheapest. Tendershoot Dryad. This is a good commander card, and it's good for our deck because we have a lot of artifacts in this deck. And it's going to be probably pretty easy for us to get the City's Blessing. This comes down the battlefield at the beginning of each upkeep. Create a 1/1 green Saproling. So it's going to make me a lot of Saprolings, 3/3 Saprolings once it probably gets around, because yeah, we're going to have a lot of permanents on the battlefield, so it's fine. This is going to be kind of our game ender with like a Creator Hoof or End Raise Tyrants. We can just end the game pretty fast. Haywire Might is our utility artifact creature. It's great. One cost colorless, and also has the ability for a green mana, you can sacrifice it to exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. It's a great uncommon from the Brothers War. And Razor Tyrants, 7/7 boar, and it is like basically mostly like a Crater Hoof. It's much cheaper. It's much more budget friendly. What's nice about this is it actually gives it doesn't give you the X for all the creatures you control. It just gives you a base 2/2. However, what we like about this, we do still get the trample and they get vigilance, so we're not kind of like exposed if we're not quite have the job finished, which is nice. The vigilance in itself has vigilance, trample, and haste, so it's a big baddie. Bullmat Courier, this is just gonna come down in our opening hand and kind of act as a Mystic Remora. And the meaning, what I mean by that, for 1 mana, it's going to draw us like 3 or 4 cards. So, really solid. It's 1 cost. Whenever it attacks, we exile a card from our library. And then for 1 red mana, we can sacrifice the artifact itself and draw that many cards that it exiled under it. Here's a Terastodon. If we can get into this earlier enough, we can really put we can put some stops, put some brakes on any of our opponents that are maybe more problematic. We can actually take out their lands. So this card for 8 mana, it's a 9/9. When Terastodon enters the battlefield, it may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. So if if it had a big threat, perhaps they have some nice mana rocks out, or they have a good start, we could probably slow down that particular opponent. We could probably take out all those non-creature permanents that that also includes lands. So we can hit lands, we can hit their enchantments, we can hit their artifacts, we can hit up to 3 for each of those non-artifact or non-creature permanents destroyed. That controller of those things creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. So they'll get some elephant tokens that are creatures and as a return. But when we have a 9/9 out and we have so much Gruul power in this deck, they're just gonna be little dwarfs compared to what we have to offer. Defiler of Vigor. This is an awesome green creature. It is similarly priced to our Elder Gargaroth. It is not as strong in the sense that it can draw us cards. However, it does reduce the mana cost of green permanents that we control by 1. And whenever we cast a green permanent spell, we get to put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. So it starts really getting crazy. Can really start buffing off our team. Memnite is a 1/1 for 0. So we like our 0 cost, and we like Memnite. So there it is. Phyrexian Dragon Engine. This is a very cool. It's a double striker, which I had mentioned. So we have some double strike synergies in this deck. And if it does die, we can always unearth it from our graveyard for 3 and 2 mountains. So it would make us discard any cards. We usually don't want to have any cards in hand when we do that, and it'll let us draw 3 additional cards. Here's the Crater Hoof Behemoth. This card is an 8-cost card. It has haste, and it gives, when it comes to the battlefield, it gives XX to all of our creatures based on how many creatures are on the battlefield. So if, for instance, we have, I'm just giving a hypothetical situation where we have, for instance, a couple cat tokens and we have a couple shaman tokens from like an Eska Chariot line. So perhaps we have, with our commander, perhaps we have 5 creatures on the battlefield and we play like a Crater Hoof Behemoth. So all the creatures will get +5/+5. Actually, they actually get +6/+6 because the Behemoth would count itself. So 6 power, 6 toughness. I mean, it's kind of like a snowballing like effect where it's just going to deal like probably more damage than it needs to an opponent. At particular times to take them out. It's a very hard card to deal with. Very problematic if not dealt with. Terror of the Peaks is a 5/4 dragon. And once again, if we can somehow like make a copy of this with our reflection token, we could get really busy with this card. Whenever we play a creature, based on its power, the Terror of the Peaks will deal that much damage to any target. So for instance, if we had a Terror of the Peaks and we played like a Kogla, we could go ahead and deal 7 damage to any target we would like to. So it's kind of a nice little feature for this deck because we do have a lot of high-powered creature cards. So this card has definitely done its job many times. Avenger of Zendikar. This is a 7-cost card, 2 mountain, 2 forests, and 5 colorless. And when it comes on the battlefield, it creates a number of 0/1 green plant creature tokens for each land we control. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature you control. So it just helps us make our battlefield wider, makes these little plants based on how many lands we have, and just a very good complement to our Crater Hoofs and our End-Raised Tyrants. It just kind of give us more juice, more power to add to the team. Augur of Autumn, just a great utility card, keeps our gas going, lets us play lands from the top of our deck, and also lets us play creatures as well, just creatures. If we have 3 different power creatures on the battlefield, which we do, we have like the Ornithopters, we have Memnites, we have Meria, we have Augur. We're going to hit that Covenant very easily, and this is just going to act like a 3-mana reality chip. Just let us play like the creatures and lands from the top of our deck. Wormcoil Engine, 6 mana, 6/6, colorless, has Death Touch Lifelink. When Wormcoil Engine dies, create a 3/3 colorless Worm artifact creature token with Death Touch, and a 3/3 colorless Worm artifact creature with token with Lifelink. I really like the Lifelink a lot. Death Touch is just another awesome aspect of it. Phyrexian Walker, 0 cost, 0/3. So just one of those 0 cost creature cards. It can attack. So if I put like an Explorer Scope or a Prime Blade on it, the Prime Blade will give it +1 for its attack. It will deal combat damage. It will start generating tokens. So just a fun little feature. And it also taps for mana if I needed to. Same with Ornithopter. So we have these nice little, we have the Memnite, the Phyrexian Walkers, we have the Ornithopter, Patchwork Automaton. It's like our artifact lord. It's just going to, every time an artifact comes on the battlefield, it's going to get a +1 counter. So we're going to make it very strong. It's also going to be able to tap for mana in the early game. Thunderfoot Baloth this is a creature card. It helps buff our team. As long as we control our commander, we're going to protect our commander. This is going to be no problem to come on the battlefield and start doing some serious damage. It's going to buff our squad up. And it itself is going to be a strong card. It will be like a 7/7 itself with trample. So as long as we control our commander, Thunderfoot Baloth gets 2/2, and other creatures you control get 2/2 and have trample. And it has trample itself. So it says Lieutenant there, has Lieutenant text. Then we have a Llanowar Elf. It's just some extra kind of get ahead kind of mana in the early game here. I like that. Just like, I might even consider like, now that I was looking here, I might even consider like an Elvish Mystic or maybe a Birds of Paradise. But I'll have to look through artifacts, but I'd probably be content with a Llanowar, just one of these, because, it's not an artifact, but it will in the early game help us get ahead by letting us tap for mana. So we can have early Meria. Seems like a good plan. And then there's the Hope of Girapor. And I talked about this kind of interaction with a Mox Amber earlier. It is a legendary artifact creature. For 1 cost, it's a 1/1 flyer. When this does hit, you can choose an opponent, and they won't be able to, until our next turn, they won't be able to cast non-creature spells. And it has to hit the opponent that you want to not be able to cast a non-creature spell for the next turn. So pretty cool. All right, so we went through the lands, artifacts, creatures, and now we're wrapping it up. Here's our instance here. A nice suite of removal with Chaos Warp and Beast Within. We have Return of the Wild Speaker, which is going to be our reload. It's going to help us draw a lot of cards Draws cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. It also has the effect where non-human creatures you control get 3/3/10 till end of turn. Another way where we could just end of the game. More probably better suited for like historic brawl or like a 1/1 format, the 3/3. But the cards, of course, we love the cards. And then Kazul's Fury, just another sneaky like multi-face land where we could sacrifice a creature and have it deal its power to any target, which is nice. It's an instant, or it can act as a land. You can see here. This land would come in tapped. That is the price you pay for these multi-face cards, but why not? Give it a go. And here's our suite of sorceries here. Some of these are lands. So, for instance, a Shatter Skull Smashing and the Turn Timber Symbiosis. Those can be actually, you can pay 3 life to have those come in untapped for the green mana or the red mana. See, one is green, one is red. And they also have abilities where, for instance, the Turn Timber has a high mana cost, but if you needed to act as a spell, you could go deep 7 cards of your library. You can have bring in any creature card among those from the battlefield that would enter the battlefield with 3 additional 1/1 counters on it if the mana cost was 3 or less. So, pretty cool. Also, the Shatter Skull Smashing is probably the best multi-face card land I have on here, just because it is a nice removal spell. You can like target many creatures, and we do generate a lot of mana, so we can do a lot of double damage to things. It's just a really cool card. Rishkar's Expertise is a 6 mana sorcery. Again, it's just one of those cards that's going to kind of reload our hand. It draws cards equal to the greatest power among creatures we control, and then you may cast a spell with 5 mana, 5 or less from your hand without paying its cost and cost. So 6 cost is very reasonable for this deck. I wouldn't even be opposed to paying this when we have like a 5 mana creature out, like, because Meria definitely gets there when she gets all the equipment set up with her. So, and then once you draw those cards, you can play a card from 5 value or less from your hand, and you may, without paying its mana cost. Ooh, that's spicy. So here's Vandal Blast. This card can either, for 1 mana sorcery, destroy a single artifact, or if you can overload it for 4 colorless and 1 red, it will destroy all opponents' artifacts. Ooh, brutal. So good. Blasphemous Act. This is just another way for us to interact with our opponents. It can basically start us from scratch. And I do like our deck. I think it can rebuild fast. We have a lot of card advantage built into it, so I do like Blasphemous Act. This card, it deals 13 damage to each creature and it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. Burn Down the House is going to also be kind of a nice sweeper for us. Sometimes we might have to invoke this if, maybe a combo is being assembled like by our opponent's side. This could be probably a way maybe to slow them down a little bit. But, I'm always looking for, suggestions too for these decks. So, I mean, it's hard to say, like, Burn Down the House is a nice sweeper. I can make tokens as well, 1/1s. It could also be that maybe I just need like an unlicensed Hearst in this deck. Perhaps to like hit graveyards and people with some very strong graveyard synergies. I mean, that's just another option. So, I mean, there's things to consider here. And I definitely will go back into the list because I'm just looking through here. We are short a card now with that extra Dousing Dagger. So I might just put in a Hearse in here and just call it a day. It's not the worst card. Definitely not. So that's the extent of the sorceries. And here are the 2 enchantments I'm running. I'm running a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. And the Fable does create a 2/2 Shaman creature token whenever this creature attacks. That's on chapter 1, create a treasure token. So the turn it comes out, it makes a 2/2 token that's a Shaman. Goblin Shaman, when it attacks, it makes a treasure. Stage 2, I may discard up to 2 cards if you do draw that many cards, so it helps us filter through, maybe find some cards that will serve us better. And those other 2 cards, they do discard into the graveyard. And we do have some cards that are good to discard into the graveyard, like our Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and also our Cityscape Leveler. Those are good kind of filter hits where we can play them from the graveyard and get value from them. And then on our Chapter 3, Exile the Saga, then Return to the Battlefield, transformed under your control. This is the really threatening part about this card. Making the reflection here. It could copy our non-token creatures that aren't legendary. And if we do have some very strong synergies here, we have some strong ETB creatures that are non-legendary. This could just definitely kind of finish the game, like with a Crater Hoof, for instance. If you were to play Crater Hoof and copy the hoof, you can see how the damage can just kind of stack up and get kind of out of control. So what a card for 3 mana. And I did see the value. I think I bought this at like $18. I think it's like $30 now or something like that. And I think it just keeps going up. It's seen a lot of play in lots of formats, it's been hot in Standard, but I'm seeing it just kind of being played in a lot of different formats, including Modern. So really solid card. I think it's getting played in a lot. What a card, huh? Yeah. And then Sylvan Library kind of has a similar power level where it just gets you so far ahead on cards. The 4 life is kind of inconsequential when we do have like some life gain dynamics in here. For instance, with our Shadow Spear and our Titan of Industry, which can gain life as well. So yeah, Sylvan Library, 2 mana enchantment. You may draw 2 additional cards during your draw phase. If you do so, put 2 of those cards drawn this turn back on top of your library, or pay 4 life per card not replaced. So basically a -8 for an additional 2 cards, or you can just take one of the cards and do -4, and you get to basically put them back in a particular order, which is nice. So really cool card. And then finally, our last 2 cards here are Planeswalkers. Garruk the Primal Hunter, Chandra the Torch of Defiance. Garruk is going to act like the Return of the Wild Speaker or the Rick Scars experience. It's going to come down and kind of just draw us those cards based on our highest power creature. It's going to be like a nice refuel for us. I might not see really in a point to really defending it, so it's probably just going to be utilized for the cards, to be honest. And then the Chandra is just, there's nothing else to say except such a powerful card. I mean, it's +1, can generate mana. It's also an additional +1, can help us find more cards to play. And then it has a very strong ultimate. Whenever we cast a spell, it deals 5 damage to any target. So we have like a lot of low costing cards, and so if Chandra, if she doesn't get answered for a couple of turns, we're just gonna kind of finish the game off with her. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much the deck here. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to stick around, I'm probably, what I'd like to do is I like to shuffle these up now. But I actually think I'll kind of keep it cool because I want to actually see what the card I'm missing. So maybe for another video we can do a couple shuffles, but that'll be the extent of the video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day.